And there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Well, hello there and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. Today we'll be talking about culture war issues, real or imaginary. I guess that depends a lot on who you speak to. And of course, you'll find that many within the political establishment, as well as their enablers within the corporate press, very much would like to give you the impression that, you know, the only people to whom any kind of cultural issues matter are extremists by definition. In fact, let me just give you a perfect example of this. It's the ever-reliable Jim Jones. Idaho voters should West Bonner extremist candidates in November. Now, of course, he's referring to the recall election in West Bonner County School District. And, you know, this is a big win for people who were afraid that, you know, conservatives were going to get in there somehow and limit government from going around and blessing everybody or something. I don't know what. It was a hard-fought thing. It brought out some terrible behavior. The people who allegedly were trying to save the school district were the ones jumping on tables, threatening and screaming and disrupting and behaving in ways that even children would have been rolling their eyes. But, you know, we got to get rid of those extremist candidates somehow. And so Jim is encouraging people that, you know, you've got to vote. No matter what, you've got to vote because the extremists are going to be in power if not. In fact, it's sad to say, but you could actually sum up his pretty much his entire opinion column in this paragraph. This is where he really says what he's trying to say. Summing up, people need to get out to vote in these low turnout, off-year elections. He says it really matters for these important governmental units that are closest to the people, even though voters may not think they can make a difference. Just look at what happened in West Bonner County School District. Now, again, it's the only victory they've seen of this type in Idaho in a while, so I guess they're going to run with it. But listen to what he says. Jim says, folks in that very conservative part of the state demonstrated that you can be conservative without being into crazy culture war issues. They were not conservatives. And if you followed any of the town hall meetings, the concerns they expressed, the way they went about their concerns, these were daily public struggle sessions. Yes, come out, Superintendent Brandon Durst. We want you to come and account for your sins against the party and against leftist thought. So for Jim to portray this as well as a very conservative part of the state, they showed that you can be conservative without being into crazy culture war issues. No. What you saw those people doing was very much for collectivists, not for conservatives. And now, you know, it's going to be interesting. The ball is in their court. Let's see what happens over the next year or so. Let's see if there's even a school district left when they finish running it into the ground. But hey, you know, very conservative, according to Jim. By the way, when he talks about these crazy culture war issues, I almost get the impression that Jim is suggesting they don't exist, which is kind of par for course for those who are pushing this left-wing agenda. They want to insist and gaslight us it's not really happening, but if it was, it would be a good thing. And you see this especially where we conflate people wishing to restrict salacious material to minors are being heralded as book burners. Well, the sheriff from Kootenai County actually went and put this to the test, looked at things for himself. He did something that I strongly encourage everybody to do. Take the law into your own hands. No, I'm kidding. Go to the source. In other words, don't just take somebody's word for it. Go find out for yourself. And I got to give credit to Coeur d'Alene Press for publishing the sheriff's editorial. A message from your sheriff, time to stop the false library information. This is as great a breakdown as I've seen. I'd be curious to see what Jim Jones' response would be. Here's Sheriff Robert Norris, and this is his explanation of why he went to the library, why he did what he did. He says, for the past 2 years, I have endless concerns over library content from a variety of communication loops. I've watched members of our community call each other liars, radicals, as tensions escalated. Arrests have been made at some library board meetings. I've seen across this country at political entities such as school boards, libraries, and city councils. Next, he says, as a father and as a person who is constitutionally responsible for maintaining peace in Kootenai County. He's right. He is a peace officer first and foremost. He says, I decided to visit the Hayden and Post Falls Library to see for myself. A concerned citizen provided me with 2 books that I confirmed came from our library network. A review with an experienced sex crimes investigator was conducted, and the following was determined. Okay, so this isn't just him going and, well, based on what I saw, he actually consulted with some folks on these and says Idaho Statute 18-1515 defines material harmful to minors, 17 and under, as any book that contains explicit and detailed verbal descriptions of sexual conduct or excitement. You can see the statute for the full description. So to that end, the sheriff actually started reading the book. He reviewed the book, Deal With It, and saw that the author recommends reading age at 14 years and up. The library said they do not control access to this book, and the following verbal descriptions of sexual conduct are in the book, Deal With It, on page 88. Now, I'm going to forego sharing those with you. Suffice it to say, there's nothing left to the imagination. It's very, very graphic language. Now, the sheriff says in reviewing the elements of 18-1515, one will notice the term explicit and detailed verbal descriptions of sexual conduct. What that means is this book fits the elements of the Idaho statute. This book given to a minor outside of a library would be a violation of Idaho law. And you understand that if the law had been signed into, if it had been signed into law by the governor, same thing. It would have been illegal for the library to provide that to underage kids. Now, the sheriff says at a recent town hall meeting, I said I spoke in support of a bill that passed the Idaho legislature that stated sexually explicit material in violation of 18-1515 should be only accessible to adults 18 years and older. The bill did not restrict or ban which books a library could purchase. You understand? It didn't ban anything. It just put boundaries around it for people under a certain age. Now, look, why do we have to pretend like that's a bad thing? That's akin to denying people's existence. It's not. And I know that's kind of the catchphrase. Well, these are books that talk about LGBTQ characters. That's what people really have a problem with. No, because there are other books that talk about LGBTQ characters, but you know what they don't do? They don't go into graphic, excruciating detail about every sexual act that they're engaged in. These books do. And for that reason, it's right that starting with parents and others in the community should sit up and say, okay, we do not need to make this available to all kids regardless of age, because then it starts looking real pervy. Then it starts looking like there's some kind of a grooming goal that's at stake here. Again, I don't understand why we have to pretend. Jim, I'm looking in your direction as one who pretends these are just culture war issues that they're just made up. They're just crazy. No, that's very real. And now we have an actual sworn member of law enforcement, someone who is sworn to, maintain peace in his community, going to the library, testing it out and saying, hey, this is not good. I was able to get this. And frankly, my daughter, had she wanted to check the book out, would have been able to. That's a problem. Not because, conservatives are mean and icky and want to make people feel guilty. It's a problem because someone is trying to mainline filth into the minds of our younger people and to mainstream it in the rest of our lives. Okay, now you don't need a law for everything, but it is okay to say no. Yeah, we don't need that. It does not measurably improve our lives in any way. Here's an interesting observation. Pick this one up off of Twitter. It's always the most red states that get the crummiest Republicans. Now, this has nothing to do with Mike Simpson being a holdout, in the House of Representatives against, voting in a new House Speaker. Jim Jordan, I believe, is the one that he refuses to vote for. Why? Because he's an insurrectionist, or he believes that the election in 2020 wasn't absolutely pure and honest. Well, he's not alone. But listen to this observation. You know why red states get the crummiest Republicans? Because Democrats know they can't win, so they embed themselves in with the Republicans and get weak-kneed, milquetoast Tupperware salesmen like Mike Rogers elected. How are Republicans fooled into letting this happen? Well, because of the false big tent Republicanism lie the RNC and state GOPs sell you on. That's the crazy thing. It's not about who can we impose our values on today. It's more about who can we count on to keep government from being used as a tool to impose anybody's values on anybody else? Not just a matter of, well, we want to impose our values. That's, to me, that in a nutshell, that's what's wrong with politics. But yeah, the Mitt Romneys, the Mike Simpsons, the Mike Rogers of the world, They know they gotta hang with that milquetoast center. By the way, this is a story that you're probably not going to hear much about in mainstream media sources. But given all the coverage that they gave, well, did you see that Patriot Front was arrested, ready to do mayhem and violence at a pride festival? And see, it was proof that, the MAGA extremists are taking over the country and we've got to do something. They're domestic terrorists, blah, blah, blah. What's this? Oh, the case against Patriot Front leader Thomas Rousseau has been dismissed due to prosecutorial misconduct and Brady violations. I believe I've heard this tune before. Now, he was charged with conspiracy to riot to keep counter-protesters away from an Idaho Pride event in 2022. Okay, this was the big arrest in Coeur d'Alene, and, you had human rights organizations, so-called human rights organizations, feeding information to the Idaho State Police, among others, telling them about this incredible white supremacist influx that was going to take place. Folks, I'm not telling you that you've got to now align yourself with the Proud Boys, but can we at least agree the threat was greatly overblown, and it appears that some corners were cut. So regardless of what you may think of the Proud Boys, if it's bad enough that a judge says, yeah, we have to dismiss this due to prosecutorial misconduct and Brady violations, but hang on, that's not the first time. Just last month, another one of the 31 members of Patriot Front that were arrested last year, Richard Jessup, had his case dismissed due to the same reasons. Okay, now again, my goal here is not to make sure that you land on the side of the Proud Boys and that's where you belong. I'm not telling you who you need to join or not. I'm just saying, if they were wrong about this, if the press, if the authorities were wrong about this, or if they ended up breaking rules in order to create a crisis where there really wasn't one, you might want to think twice about trusting them. Oh, by the way, let's talk about how this is going to reflect on the city of Coeur d'Alene. This means that on top of the expense of law enforcement and the failed prosecution, which cost the taxpayers millions, by the way, if he were so inclined, Mr. Rousseau could likely sue the city of Coeur d'Alene to kingdom come, and any chances of having a balanced budget will go out the window. Now, again, this is not about sympathy for Patriot Front. This is about people in wrongdoing, covers, with cover from the press. And is the press going to make as big a deal out of this? Well, you realize they tossed those cases. No, they'll keep this very quiet. If it's mentioned at all, it'll just be that, well, but there were a couple that pleaded guilty to trespassing or something like that. I mean, it's something to keep in mind when you hear that drum being beaten about all the extremists and how they're taking over everything and, going to ruin it all for us. It's just possible that the problem is being exaggerated to some degree. Now, when it comes to dealing with, extremists in government, well, dark money is a good way to do that. And it's funny, the most freedom-oriented think tanks, Idaho Freedom Foundation, among others, they do get donor money, but it's always referred to as dark money. Oh, this dark money is being used for things we don't even understand by out-of-state interests and so forth. And yet, you want to see what real dark money does when it's brought into play? Okay, let me show you this. This is a text that Brian Lenny sent out last week to show you how much money is going to be spent trying to flip Idaho blue. Now, this will be through the open primaries and ranked choice voting. Look at this report. One group spent just $47,000 rather against Brian Lenny, also Senator Treacle, and Senator Nichols. Here's what it looks like. Here's the document of this group that was recently founded. Notice the name here. Let's see. What was the name? Oh, here it is. Idaho Liberty PAC. $47,500 to get rid of these troublesome senators. I guess look, there's a lot of money at stake. When the legislature is in session, there's big business, IACI, among others, lobbyists who love to spend their time at the Capitol because there's a windfall in it for them. Now, I don't believe that's the way it's supposed to be, but it most certainly is the way that business is done right now. I don't know who did this marvelous picture, but it's more accurate than not. This doesn't mean these were all evil, horrible, hateful men, but the money is a major motivation. And so when it comes to hanging on to political power, part of it's going to be because of the money, part of it's going to be because of the power, but holy cow, if anybody suggests limited, that's a threat to those who want that kind of power and want that kind of access. It's a big rigged game. They love to play it. Probably feel pretty justified. I don't know what they tell themselves to be able to sleep at night, feeling, oh, I've truly served the people well. But you don't have to be fooled. Go to the source. Question everything that is being beamed at you or written or otherwise playing out in front of your eyes. Really question it and make up your own mind. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
Are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see.
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.